Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I have seen come over and over again in my LinkedIn feed, but also in news, which is the new EU Pay Transparency Directive that will take effect on June 7th of next year of 2026. Today, we want to look into what that means when it comes to communicating salaries for companies, and also to discuss if it makes sense as a company to add salaries to job ads. Let's get into this discussion. Hi, this is Laura, and you're listening to the CareerBee Talks podcast, where we share all the newest insights on the recruiting world from both sides, the candidate perspective and the company perspective. Let's jump right in. Hi, Luca. So happy to be talking with you about this very important topic where companies in the EU next year will be required to more transparently communicate their salaries. But what exactly does it mean for companies?
Yeah, so it's a directive from the EU governmental directive, and I think we have to distinguish between what's really in it and then what you might have read about it on LinkedIn. So, as always with these law texts, when we really need to look into the detail. Um, so, what's the main idea? The main idea is to have more transparency regarding pay and pay ranges, also look into potential discrimination, for example, between male and female employees that, however, are doing the same amount of job. Um, However, what we also have to say is it does not 100% require every company to now include a salary or a salary range in the job ad. This is really important. It does not say that even for on LinkedIn, a lot of times you read people making posts that this will be mandatory by the next year. However, if you really look into the text closely, the directive does mention that companies can satisfy the criteria by doing this. On the other hand, they would also have the option of not putting a salary into the job ad and instead then informing the candidate before the interview about the potential range, right? So it's just important that we are looking into the details here. Even though I'm happy to get your opinion, Laura, as well. Even though I'm always a friend of including salary ranges in the job ads, anyhow. So my recommendation would be for companies to do it, regardless if we are being forced to by this directive or not.
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, practically, if we look into this new law, companies will require to be more transparent when it comes to salaries, but they can choose how. So they could use the job ad, but they could also, use an email before the interview or during the interview, communicate that verbally about the salary ranges, right? That just to kind of summarize
Yes.
what it means. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because coming to your question, I think this is such an important topic to talk about. I mean, I saw some statistics that currently in the EU, there's only like 3% of companies actually publishing salaries. So it's really not much. And we know that, right? We work with so many companies. They never want us, or not every company, but many don't want us to add the salary ranges in the job ad. And also, if we look through job boards, we won't see that too often. And I mean, if we look at the benefits, just to answer your question briefly, I do think it makes a lot of sense. And I had a brief, comment discussion with a person as well who was saying, it's good to be more transparent for candidates, but not for a company. And I was talking with the person. I was like, well, but why? Because if we are a little bit more transparent with salaries, what we are doing is we are disqualifying candidates that don't find that salary attractive at all, so that we save up a lot of time of negotiation, where in the end we won't find each other anywhere in the middle. And I still think that candidates who are like, this is a little bit below what I expected, but let me impress them and then try to negotiate, they will still apply for that job. But if I'm like, it's so far off, there's no way we will match, then I won't apply. And that's a good thing for the company. So overall, I do think there are some benefits. What are your thoughts on what you said? It could make sense.
Yeah, so in general, currently, I always recommend this to companies when they ask me how can I increase the range of my job ad. I'm not getting any good candidates, right? So it's just something that currently we see that 50% you get 50% more applications usually to your job ad once you include
Right.
a salary range. Because candidates just want to know and they don't want to apply to jobs where they don't know what will happen in the end, and then they go through a lengthy interview process of multiple weeks just to be in the end informed about the salary that is way lower than what they currently have. Um, of course, the question is, well, if everyone is then doing it, it probably will not be an advantage anymore, right? From that point of view, I can understand that this argument. What is really important that also to mention about the directive is even if you communicate the range to your, if you don't want to make the option of putting it in a job ad and you want to communicate the range to the candidate via email before the interview, for example, again, there's kind of like a thing you can do is like just say that the range is, well, the range is between 10,000 euros and 200,000 euros, and then it's completely meaningless again, right? So I hope we will not see companies doing that to kind of like shift their way around it. Um, Instead, what I think what is happening here is like trying to force, especially bigger companies, to have like an objective salary scheme behind in the organization. And I do think that this is something positive and this is something good. And again, you are not tied down to one specific number. You can work with ranges and you are free how to communicate this to the candidate. So I think overall, probably the results are going to be positive. And but as always, I'm not the biggest fan of bureaucratic regulations like this. I would rather have companies do this on their own and according to their own terms. But then we see, as you said, like a very low percentage is only doing it at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with the fact that it would be nice to leave companies on their own out there in the sense of they'll notice that if I add that, I have a competitive advantage, and then more and more companies would probably start doing that on their own. But yeah, let's like knowing that this is going to be kind of a requirement, however you want to implement it. I do want to highlight these benefits because I do see them as well. And I mean, as a company, I think what it also makes overall, right, once we have implemented that, because the process of getting there is going to be complicated, but once we have implemented that, it might also reduce a little bit the recruiting process and make it more straightforward, like the length of it, because the negotiation part many times takes weeks, and that many times comes to the fact that we didn't have this range or whatever settled in our company, and we're so broad in what we could accept, what we can't accept, so that every candidate is a new case in the company, needs to be discussed with all these different hierarchy levels, while when we have this range and a candidate applies and the candidate knows kind of the range already, the decision process will be more straightforward. We can accept or reject faster. So I also see that as a benefit once it is established, but the process of getting there is going to be very, very tricky, also because you have to look into differences that you have been paying within the company, if this wasn't established before, right? So the process there are going to be hard, but I think in the long term it's going to be a win-win, for candidates but also for companies. I do see that as well as a benefit.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like most companies, when I tell them, "Hey, why don't we publish the salary level?" The two most concerns I get is number one, well, then the other employees in my company see it and they maybe
Mm-hmm.
get unhappy with it,
Right.
and then the other argument being, well, everyone is then always choosing the highest amount, right? If I say, oh, the range is 4,000 until 5,000 per month, then every applicant that I get in the end will ask for 5,000 because they know that the range is
Right.
up to 5,000. Um, to those, I usually say, well, first of all, the first question with internal employees see it. Well, this only is negative if the others are paid way less, and we are hopefully advertising with a good salary range. So I question why is your other employees with similar skills and why are they getting paid under market? Maybe it's something you
Right.
should maybe then also increase their salary. because especially the younger generation, they talk the salary that they get, right? It's a myth of the past that employees would not talk about the salary, even if you try to force that they don't do it with any contracts or something like this. In the end, they will find a way to discuss it. And so it's important that this topic will be more transparent in the future. So you need to make sure that your internal salary levels make sense and that you can argue. And if you realize, well, I cannot argue why this person is earning less than the other, then please bump them up if it's possible, of course. And secondly, the argument being, well, if candidates apply, then they will choose the higher end of the range. That's definitely a thing. Here again, it's then important. Well, why are you giving a range anyhow, right? If you say, well, between 4 and 5,000, you probably have some idea that the more senior or more experienced or more valuable person should be on the higher end, and the less experienced, less senior person maybe on the lower end, for example, or less skilled or less educated, whatever your reason is. And then you also need to tell this to candidates. So I say, well, you can ask for the 5,000, but I must also say, this is our range. This is the higher end, and you would currently fall in the range at 4,300. Is this fine for you to advance, right? So yeah, I'm right with you. I'm right with you in the sense that I think the idea is good from this regulation, and I would appreciate if everyone is doing it. I just worry a bit about the bureaucratic aspect, and in the end, so we have to see how things are going. What happens if you don't do it? How many will do it? So I'm very curious next year to see how it's going.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. But I mean, maybe also explaining things from our perspective. But also explaining things from our perspective. I mean, we are on the job market every single day, talking to a lot of candidates. And I mean, when we reach out to people, most of the first questions that come along is around salary. So it is such an important topic, especially top talents, those that already have a job. They will ask about salaries pretty much in the beginning of the process anyway. So it's not a topic that we should continue to treat taboo. It is something that we need to discuss earlier. And if you have established processes eventually, that's going to make your life easier. But it's also going to help you attract not only the best, but the right talents, because then it matches already like salaries, as we've mentioned before. But it also helps you to, to be more honest and transparent with those candidates, because what happens right now, many times we're not allowed to say the specific range. Then we have to like play a little bit with the communication. I mean, we are in general very transparent and honest. We try to also communicate with the company, what can we say, what can't we say, but we try to give the information because we care about that for both ends. Nonetheless, a lot of recruiters will never talk about salaries. So it just drags a process over and over again. And then also your candidate experience isn't that good. So I do see the many benefits that can come with it. And I do think it is a topic that should be discussed more and more. So if you can already start with it even before the law, comes in place, we now have some months to prepare for it. That would be really, really great. And also depending what type of roles you are looking for. For example, we recruit a lot of field sales and sales overall, where numbers matter, right? So not talking about numbers in a job, but it's like it doesn't make sense because you're looking for profiles that love numbers. So I anyway think it's gonna just push some things that I feel are necessary to be more transparent about, and hopefully the process there isn't as rocky for most companies if the salaries haven't been that different anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned like field sales or general sales role. I'm really curious how this is going to shake out, because like in those type of roles you usually have a higher on target earning, but this is
Right.
then again subdivided between like a fixed or a base salary and then the provisions or the bonus or whatever you call it on top. So I don't know, do you need to then communicate the fixed salary or the base salary only? Do you need to communicate the expected commissions? What happens, because this regulation is especially there to, I think if you read through it, it's clearly written in mind that we don't want to have any gender differences anymore. But
Yeah.
what do you do? What happens in a sales related role, and what happens, let's say, for example, we can make the other case around. Let's say we would find that all of our female salespeople are outperforming, earning way more than the others, or it's the other one, maybe the male ones are outperforming the female. Is that then a problem?
Mhm.
I'm really curious to kind of like, yeah, see what's going to happen. with this law in the
Absolutely.
future.
Absolutely. And maybe to build on that, I mean, for anybody listening up until here, we're very curious to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions, your questions. So feel free to just use the comment section in this podcast. I think it's going to be very interesting to learn from each other and also discuss with each other how we're going to implement or how we're going to deal with these new laws coming up. And yeah, thank you so much, Luca, for this conversation, and also for anybody listening up until here. Thank you so much. And of course, if you are in the process of finding talents, salary disclosure or not salary disclosure at this moment, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to discuss how we can also help in the process of finding top talents and also help you identify the right salary ranges for your jobs at the moment. See you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you are a company who's currently looking to expand their team with amazing talent, make sure to check out our website, careerbeat.io, to learn more about our recruiting services and how we can help you find the best candidate for your open roles. On the other side, if you are a candidate who's currently looking to find a job in the US or Germany, make sure to explore our website, careerbeat.io/talents, to see how our masterclass and our additional career services can get you to find your dream job. In any case, you can always reach out to our team via the email team@careerbeat.io. We are so happy to continue sharing many more insights around recruiting and job searching.